Hey guys, welcome back, it's Rap again. In today's video, my entitled sister forged documents to steal my inheritance and built an illegal house and swimming pool on my property. However, karma ends up biting her. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. The first one starts like this. I've been dealing with my sister's entitlement from the moment I was born. She would always feel the need to be the center of the attention at my own birthday parties, or would whine anytime someone else opened a present at Christmas. For the most part, as we grew older, these incidents became distant memories in my mind along with any other similar situations. We grew apart naturally, so I guess I never really noticed that she would keep all the attitudes she had from when we were children. But after what happened recently, I don't think I will ever forget them. As we grew up, my parents were away a lot because of their business, which meant our grandparents minded us most of the time. We would go and stay at their home on a gorgeous plot of land downtown. I developed a very close bond with my grandparents. I saw them as more of a paternal figure than my own parents, admittingly. My sister did not feel the same. She would constantly disobey them, saying horrible things like, "They are old, it's not like they can catch me." Every time they were watching us, she would leave the house and wouldn't come back until either they had left or she needed more money from them. I never really bothered to find out why she was like this, and I doubt I ever will. After what she has done, she doesn't really deserve the opportunity to explain herself. Anyway, it's coming close to a year now since I first heard of my grandparents passing. They passed within a week of each other, which hurt my heart more than you can possibly imagine. I planned the majority of their funeral with the help of my mom, as they were her parents and understandably she was close with them too. We made sure it was perfect and encapsulated what amazing lives they lived. My sister did not even bother to show up to the ceremony, which made my mom sadder than even I was. My sister claimed she was doing something really important, which we later found out was going to a dance class with her boyfriend at the time. She goes through them fast. Roughly a month after the funeral, I decided I was brave enough to face going to the will attorney to have them read my grandparents' will. They had decided to put their assets together in a joint will. My parents, me and my sister all went together. My sister spent the whole journey telling us that she was going to get the house and that we could come and visit once or twice if we like. Truthfully, I wasn't really bothered about what I would be left with. I just knew this was something that had to be done, and hearing my sister speak only of what she wished to inherit made me sick to my stomach. To my daughter and her husband we leave $50,000. I hope this will be enough for you two to take the long-deserving vacation you both need, the will attorney read, reading directly from their will. Hearing what they had written was enough to make the tears well up in my eyes once again. But I somehow managed to suppress them. And to my dearest grandson, we leave another $50,000 for you to hopefully save, and we leave our home and land in which you will hold full ownership of. The lady allowed us then to read a copy of the will so that we could look at the more personal comments that our grandparents had left on our own. My sister quickly snatched one of the copies and scanned it frantically with her eyes. "And what do I get? There must be some mistake. I know those hacks were old, but really? How did they forget me?" She screamed, her eyes practically popping out of her head. "Let's go," my mom whispered, not wanting to cause a scene. We thanked the lady and left with copies of the will. She also handed me the official will in a sealed envelope, as I would be claiming the deeds, and we went on our way. The whole way home, my sister ranted about how horrible our grandparents were for leaving her out of the will. The rest of us chose to block her out and drove home in silence. After a few days staying at my parents' house, I headed back home so I could get back on with my work. All I remember about that day is driving 1 minute and the next I was tumbling around in my car as it flipped in the air. I was in hospital for half a year recovering from the injuries I sustained that luckily weren't anywhere near as bad as they could have been. My sister brought me all of my belongings from the wreckage with a smile on her face that did not seem sympathetic, more sinister. I shrugged it off given that she had bothered to deliver my things to me, which I was very grateful for. For the 6 months I was in the hospital, I did not do much of anything other than try to get better and do some work on my laptop when I could. I kept looking at the envelope that I kept in my bag next to the bedside table, deciding whether to reopen the official will or not. Of course, I'd read it not that long ago, but something about opening the official one felt bigger, so I didn't. The day I got discharged all those months later was possibly the worst day of my life. I decided I wanted to go to my grandparents' house straight away, even though I did not have the keys yet, I just wanted to visit. My parents drove me, and it's safe to say we were all speechless once we got there. For a moment I thought we had gotten lost, but no, we were in the right place. Instead of our grandparents' house that had been in the family for generations, there sat a modern-looking building with a large pool outside. We got out of the car and stood there for what felt like hours before the door to the house burst open and out came my sister. "Hi guys, I wondered when you would show up. What do you think of the place?" my sister asks, looking at us like she expected a round of applause. "What have you done?" I ground out, storming over to her as fast as I could on my crutches, my parents not far behind. "It's pretty obvious. I just used the land for better purposes." "The old house here was so ugly," she replied nonchalantly. "But it was full of memories. That's where I grew up, you ungrateful wench." "It's where you and your brother spent most of your childhood years," my mother screamed in a way which all of us shocked. She had never raised her voice like that before. "Mother? How dare you? I'm your daughter," my sister whined. "Not anymore, you aren't," my mother whispered furiously. "This is not even your land. How did you do this?" I interrupted before my sister could reply. "Oh well, I changed some of the documents. It's not fair that you got everything," she said with a shrug. I went back to the car and found my bag, ripping open the envelope with what I thought was the official will inside, only to find one of the copies. I realized right away that she had traded them at some point after collecting my bags and forged a will to give her the full deed to the house. "I cannot believe you. Why would you destroy something so dear to all of us? And illegally at that," I yelled as I made my way back over. My sister turned around and started going back inside. I've had enough of all this. All three of you, get off my property." We watched as she went inside and immediately called the cops. We also called the will attorney and asked her to come over straight away. The police and the will attorney spent a while going through documents that proved that she must have forged a will to get the property in her name. "What's going on here?" she yelled as she came outside again. "Miss, do you have any proof that you own this land?" one of the officers asked. "Yes, of course I do," she stuttered and quickly went and fetched the official copy of the will. The police handed it to the will attorney, who quickly scanned it and told them that it had definitely been tampered with and providing information on how she knew. "You are under arrest for the destruction of property and the forging of official government documentation," the officer said after the attorney had finished, stepping closer to my sister. "What? No!" she replied and made a lunge for the will just as the officer started to restrain her. The will fell down and landed on the floor, which with a bit of difficulty I picked up. As she was dragged from the car, I stared at the paper with a tear rolling down my face as I thought all of the memories that she had destroyed. Just when I was about to stop reading, my eyes spotted something which made me smile, ever so slightly alongside all of this. Clearly, she had not even bothered to properly look at the will. It turns out they did not forget to add you to the will, sis. I began with a shrug and waited for everyone to turn their attention to me. "My dearest granddaughter, may this be a lesson to you that if you are not grateful for what you have, you will pay the price tenfold." I read the writing that was scrawled on the back of the will aloud. My sister was stunned as she was shoved into the cop car. It was almost as if my grandparents knew something like this would happen. At least that's what I like to tell myself to make me feel better about the whole thing. All I know for sure is that if my grandparents are watching, they are laughing to themselves about the well-deserved karma my sister received and will continue to receive for the next 30 years as she hopefully rots in prison, as well as repay all the debt she owes me. And yeah, Ripe Stars, that person, aka that sister, certainly got what she deserved. Because you should never mess with official documents for once, and especially not the will of people. Either way, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and maybe even like the video, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. The next one is a revenge story. So I was staying in an older hotel in San Francisco. The elevator was very small, very old school, and had signage everywhere about how you couldn't operate it with more than 4 people. I had also been stuck in there twice already that weekend. The elevator would stop between floors. Each time I called the front desk and they were able to recall it to the ground floor, but I had learned to be wary. I should have started taking the stairs, but I was on the 8th floor and was feeling lazy. So on Sunday morning, I waited for the elevator for quite a while. It was pretty slow. It arrives, I hop in, and a family of 5 walks up to the elevator and follows me in. They were all large people and they all had huge suitcases, and I politely pointed out the sign and said that I'd already been stuck in the elevator twice and that we should split the group into 2. They laughed and said that they were all staying on. Well, I thought, enjoy your ride. I proceeded to run up the stairs and hit the call button on every single floor. The best part was that I could hear them complaining from the stairwell every time the elevator opened and nobody was there. Petty revenge never felt so good. And the next one is another revenge story. On my MNLSFO flight, Philippines to USA, I had turned in my seat about 4 times to ask another passenger to tap her touchscreen gently. She kept stabbing at the screen and headrest while giving no Fs. Each time I asked her to take care, she just stared at me in silence. After the 4th time she replied, "Just deal with it," and continued on. This was about a third of the way in on a 13-hour or so flight. On my next bathroom break, I went up to the young man seated behind her and showed him a message I wrote on my notes app that read, "The lady sitting in front of you is playing whack-a-mole with my headrest. I'll give you $50 when we land if you F with her for at least an hour." He laughed and nodded. After about an hour later, I heard commotion behind me. "Quit it," she said. It appeared that he had AirPods on and continued to feign sleep, readjusting to hit her seat every so often. He just ignored her when she finally got up and tapped him, quite hard I might add, and he made a fuss about waking up in confusion, offered apologies and continued on readjusting his feet every so often for what seemed like the rest of the flight. Upon exiting, I waited at the gate for him and he waved away my offer to pay him. Really nice guy. And the next one is another revenge story. So I am male 23 and in August 2017 I was in a bar and I ran into an old friend. I was talking to her and she had my hand on my shoulder and we were flirty, etc. Her friend came out of nowhere and kicked me in the balls as hard as she could for no reason. Apparently she's a mean drunk and thought I didn't know the girl I was speaking to and was trying to protect her. I hit the ground immediately and I couldn't breathe and everyone was staring at me and I didn't know what to do. I was just dying on the ground for a few minutes when the bouncer basically dragged me out and the girl I was talking to was apologizing. My balls killed me so much I immediately Ubered it to the hospital and turns out my left testicle ruptured, popped from the kick, but since I went to the hospital ASAP, they were able to operate and save it rather than having to remove it. However, it's still gonna have less functionality from now on. Obviously, I was extremely pissed and I filed a police report and thankfully, the cops took it very seriously and got video footage from the bar, eyewitness accounts, statements from everyone including the girl who kicked me. The girl reached out to me numerous times and apologized, but I didn't care. I wanted her in jail. The police told me they've gathered enough evidence to charge her and that due to the video and witness statements the charges will stick, but it will be up to the judge on how harsh of a punishment she will get. They suggested that she will get a light punishment because she is a straight-A student, never been in trouble, parents are wealthy and she has retained a great lawyer. Also, she is a white 20-year-old girl, so that plays a huge part. The cops recommended I just take a written and verbal apology from her, and her lawyer contacted me and told me that she wants to become a teacher, so she won't be able to become a teacher if she has a criminal record, and he gave me her written apology in advance, hoping to sway my mind. But well, I rejected all of this and pushed on towards charges. About 2 years later, she was convicted and she spent about 3 weeks in jail, paid a fine and has community service, and most importantly, she now has a criminal record and now cannot be a teacher. She contacted me many times before the charges were laid and begged me to drop them, saying that she was just drunk and never hurt anyone before and it was a mistake, but she literally popped my ball for no reason and for that she had to pay. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this story in the comments. Do you think that this girl got more than she deserved, or was it just right? To be honest, in my opinion, if you assault somebody, whatever consequences there are for you, you deserve them. Especially in this situation, kicking someone in the private parts is a really serious thing and cannot be taken lightly. Anyway, the next one is titled "Remove Your Security," posted on r/amIthejerk. So lately there have been a number of burglaries in the area I live in. My wife and I were among those who got burglarized, and most of the stuff we lost were packages and electronics. My wife and I both work long hours, so we are not home most of the time, and despite taking precautions, we still are concerned for the safety of our belongings as well as other things. So I decided to get a doorbell camera, which frankly has become a necessity, and it's cheap to buy, just below $200 and easy to install. And so far, we were able to catch a number of thieves in the act. To my surprise, some of them I knew personally and were from the area, which helped a lot in getting our stuff back. But onto the issue, my neighbor and I were discussing this with a few other neighbors and I showed him a video that was taken by the camera to explain how we were able to identify the individuals who tried to steal our stuff. I was fast forwarding the footage, but he suddenly freaked out and pointed at his wife, who was at the door, to visit my wife. I was confused when he asked how long I've been keeping this video and if I made copies of it. He then proceeded to tell me it didn't feel right to see his wife being recorded by the doorbell cam, and the fact that I didn't get rid of this part since it had nothing to do with catching the thieves made him uncomfortable. I apologized for any misunderstanding and promised that it had nothing to do with his wife. We had few people stand at our door who were shown on our cam, so it was not just his wife. He cut the conversation and left, then came back in the evening to ask for how long I'll be keeping this camera. I asked why, and he said he wasn't sure about his wife being recorded and asked me to remove it. I said no, and then he suggested I install one inside, but I still said no. He got all pissed and said that I was acting inappropriately and mean after he came to me with his concerns, expecting me to understand that he doesn't want me having footage of his wife. I told him his wife can stop coming over if he was so worried, but he went on about never telling his wife what to do or where to go. He insisted I remove the cam, but I told him to get effed and never bring this up again. He then left and got others involved. They told me I should be more considerate of my neighbor's feelings and understand where he's coming from, but I stood my ground and refused to remove the camera. My wife thinks I was being a jerk to our neighbor and his wife and have some respect for them. However, I don't think I was being disrespectful here. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments whether you think OP was a jerk and disrespectful in this situation or not. However, I would say the real jerk in this story was not OP, but instead the neighbor. It is also kind of suspicious that the neighbor is reacting in this way. Either he is guilty of something, or he has a very fragile ego and he's concerned about OP having a video of his wife being at OP's door. Honestly, a very weird situation all around, but definitely OP is not the a-hole for having a security camera at his door. That is just his right. Anyway, comment number 1, that's a very strong reaction for someone who's 100% innocent. Think about it, OP. My spicy senses are telling me that he plans on stealing your stuff soon and is just upset that you can catch thieves. He is making up bullshit excuses for you removing your camera, therefore I would say not the a-hole. I would figure out a way to imply to him that his strong reaction seems suspicious to you. Comment number 2, I would have told this wife myself, hey neighbor, I hate to have to request this, but I need you to never come to my house again. Your husband is uncomfortable with you being recorded by our doorbell camera. The thought of not having the camera makes me uncomfortable, and I believe this is the only compromise. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Summer is a season a lot of us love, but sometimes you need something for the heat. This year I decided to build a swimming pool because I always wanted one, but I never had the time or the money. After 2 weeks, the pool was ready, a beautiful big pool in my yard. It was everything you will ever need, but with such good news, someone had to annoy me. My neighbor is the biggest Karen ever. No one around the neighborhood stands for her, and I understand why. She always has something annoying to say. I was in the front yard mowing the grass when she stopped in front of my house. I saw you build a swimming pool. When can my kids come for a swim? I answered, I don't think they can ever come. That's my pool for my family and my friends. Also, we are not even friends. There are public pools. Go there. But we live in the same neighborhood. That means you have to share what you have with your neighbors. That's crazy and untrue. If so, you can build yourself a house in the forest so you don't have neighbors. I decided to ignore her and keep mowing the grass. She stayed there for another 5 minutes talking and shouting, but I did not hear a word, or at least I did not listen. The next day I woke up late and went to make myself some coffee, and I saw her through the window. My neighbor Karen was swimming with her kids in the swimming pool. I was shocked. I lost my breath for a few seconds and then I ran out. What the hell are you doing on my property? Get out! I shouted. Don't scream in front of the kids. We are almost finished. 10 more minutes and we are out. Get the hell out now! She started pulling her children out of the pool, dressing them as slowly as she could. I felt like my heart would run from my chest. I was so full of anger. If I ever see you on my property again, I will make you regret it, I said. Are you threatening me? That's a crime, she said. Entering someone's property without their permission is also a crime. See how dumb you are? A crime is when you kill someone. I just used your pool. Fortunately, she left quickly after that, but I was angry the whole day, always keeping an eye out on the pool. A few days after the incident, I had to leave town for work. I was excited because I really wanted to leave home for a few days. No news about the swimming pool in the next few days while I was gone, and that made me happier, and I could not wait to go home and swim a little. As I entered the front yard, I could hear some voices, but I didn't know if they came from my house or a neighbor's, so I went into the backyard. My Karen neighbor and her kids swimming in my pool again. I thought I would lose my temper and go crazy on them. "Get out now," I told her. "Stop acting like this pool is yours, or this house, or this property. This is all God's, and God loves us all equally. I'm sure He would allow me to swim in your pool. All I can do is treat all of you equally, you and your kids. I'm going to come near the swimming pool and pull every single one of you out." She then got angrier and she finally left. She threatened me and shouted at me about what a bad man I am. Morning came quickly, and I guess you sleep better when you are angry, and I finally decided I should take a swim. I prepared a cold drink, towel and everything else that I needed, and as I went into the backyard, I was shocked. Karen put bleach in my pool, a very big amount, and as I walked around to check it, I also noticed that she also turned off the pump. That was the moment I decided to go to the police and finally press charges against her. When the police came home with me, I showed them the ruined pool and the videos in which I caught her on my security camera. Unfortunately, Karen did not have to go to jail, but just paid a very expensive fine. She sold her house and lost custody of the kids to her ex-husband. She paid the fine with the money she made on the house, and then she disappeared. I have no idea where she is now, but I don't want to know. All I can say is that I am sure she is an annoying neighbor anywhere she goes. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have ever dealt with entitled annoying neighbors, then please feel free to share your story either in the comments or on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit, which is our own subreddit. Thank you very much. And by the way, Ripe Stars, the next one is gonna be recorded with different audio settings, so please let me know if the first or the second story sounds better. This one was posted by user SierraTO and it is titled "Shut Your Window." This is my first time posting, so please bear with me. I have lots of stories of Karens, but I figured I would start with the oldest and most tame. This was back in the early 90s, I was maybe 20 at the time. I was a smoker, but because my mother had a heart condition, I smoked on our porch instead. My friend, whom was also a neighbor across the street, and I like to hang out on the porch and chat while we smoke. I am going to paraphrase this as best as I can, but this was a long time ago, so I don't have the exact wording. For a few days, whenever we went outside after 8 or 9 p.m, my neighbor would yell at us from her bedroom window for talking so loud. We were just talking in a normal voice, but because it was upsetting her, we lowered our voices by about 50%. That did not satisfy her though, and she yelled at us again. I told her we were talking quietly, and if it bothered her that much, then she should shut her window. "I don't have to shut my window," she yelled, "but you have to be quiet." This went on for a few days, with us repeating that she should just shut her window, and then she said, "I've had enough. I have called the cops and now you are in for it. They are going to arrest you both." We stayed outside and waited for the police officer to show up. He came over and said they received a noise complaint in my 50% volume. I told him what was going on and the words exchanged. He asked if this was the volume that I'd been speaking in. We both confirmed that it was. He asked me if I had a radio going, and I told him no, that other than our alarm clocks we did not own any radios. I invited him in the house to see. He confirmed that there were no radios/stereos, and then he asked about my car. I told him it did not work. It was my first car, an old Beta 73 Chevy Nova that barely ran. He confirmed the radio did not even work. We went back to my porch, still with me speaking in half volume and him speaking in a normal voice, when all of a sudden my neighbor decides to yell at us again. "I told you to shut up. I can still effing hear you. And tell your guy friend to go home because he is yelling. I called the cops and you're going to get in so much trouble," she screams. I calmly told her to shut her window. She starts screaming that she doesn't have to and that we are in so much trouble. The cop said that I had a right to speak in normal speaking tones regardless of the time, but especially when it was not even close to 11 p.m, which is the noise ordinance time. He told us that it was our choice if we wanted to continue talking quietly or if we wanted to speak at normal volume levels.
He said he would take care of it. While he is talking to me, she is still yelling at us and the officer to keep it down. He finally said, "Ma'am, this is the police. Shut your window and I'll be over there in a moment." She started to argue that she didn't want to, but he was insistent that she close the window. She closed it about halfway, but he simply said, "All the way closed." Slowly she closed it until we heard it latch. He tells me that once he is done talking to her, I should not have any future problems, but if I did, to give him a call. He gave me his information and then he proceeded to head on over to her house. My friend and I have no clue what he said to her because he talked to her inside her house, but whatever he said must have resonated because she never bothered us again, and whenever we were on our porch talking, she would shut her window. It's probably not a good idea to yell at a cop and tell him to shut up, especially when she called them in the first place.
And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.